And we are live for another Founder Wisdom Pod with Christine Mikhail with us today. She is a founder and CEO at Mikhail Consulting Group. So we're going to talk about organizational design, leadership, talent development, everything in between. Christine's quite interesting there. This podcast brought to you by podfire.com. If you want to start, scale, be invited to podcasts like this one, find sponsors even. Podcasts are pretty cool. Podfire.com for that. Christine, can you tell me a bit more about yourself and about Mikhail Consulting Group?
Sure. So Mikhail Consulting Group is over 3 years old. We launched in 2020, and we do a lot of organizational design consulting. Our practice has been really booming in the last year from just a change management perspective, because a lot of organizations are completely restructuring themselves and they are organizing themselves from a regionally structured program to a globally structured. So instead of being all reporting into the US, they're reporting kind of into London, and it's kind of a little bit more of a global economic situation. And I got my master's in industrial organizational psychology many years ago. And so I've been practicing as an individual, as a consulting coach for many CEOs, kind of from Sony to real estate moguls here local in California. And I do a lot of my own kind of change courses. I kind of walk all participants from individual contributors to leaders through a 6-week change course. And yeah, that's kind of what Mikhail Consulting Group does.
Pretty cool. Organizational psychology, I told you, was one of my favorite classes in university. How do you think organizations have changed since COVID? And what would the organization of the future look like structurally?
COVID, I think, changed organizations from a trust perspective. Leaders have really had to truly trust their people. So in the world of COVID, we went into remote work almost immediately, right? Most of my work coming right out of graduate school has been getting leaders to trust that you don't need people to sit in the office every day to ensure that they do work. So I was always kind of a person pushing the future of a workplace. So what does that mean? It means unassigned seating. It means giving employees the choice and the control to actually work where they feel they need to be the most productive. And if that means they work in a cafe on a Monday, if they're working from home on a Wednesday, if they're in the office Thursday and Friday because their team is in the office and they need to collaborate. The idea that I always pushed since 2013 was giving people choice and control. What the pandemic did was really launch organizations into the acceptance of that. I have to now trust my people to know that they're actually going to work from home and they're actually going to make the right choices and do what they need to do to be the most productive employees that we have on our payroll. Well, now that we're coming out of the pandemic, organizations are starting to realize that okay, we were productive, but we probably weren't as innovative. And I think we need to get people back into the office to be innovative. And there is truth in that, but you can't just force your people to come back into the office just because. You need to give them reasons why. And so if you're going to ask folks to come in and you want them to be more innovative, the question is, with whom are they going to be collaborating to be innovative, right? They're not just going to come sit in a desk, and that's not going to allow for innovation. That's not going to allow for creativity. We're often innovative when we're working with other people. So the question really is, how are we really going to make sure the right teams are collaborating together? And so I think the office of the future is really global. I think people are going to be able to work from anywhere, but they are going to need to make those connections more calculated. When am I going to come into the office, and when is that going to be really ideal for me to be the most creative, the most innovative, and to provide my organization with the ability to be ahead of the market and not catching up with the market.
All right, I have a deep question. I'm going to try to give you as much context as possible. The question is, are humans meant to work? The context to that is, I was raised in middle class, middle upper, and so were my friends, I guess, in Canada, right? And in Canada, it's like, yeah, get a job at like 16, some kind of 9 to 5. You're not pushed too much to do it. My dad, he's an entrepreneur, so he did teach about money and opening a bank account and so forth. But to me, video games were way more interesting, and then it was partying, and it never felt natural to work. And for me at this young age, I really think I had to shape my brain into it. And a bit more context on that a bit later. But my mental model was, how can I save as much energy as possible while getting paid per hour, right? And that will be a further question. The hourly model, the 9 to 5 model. And I maxed that out quite quickly. I'm a thrill-seeking guy, so I went to entrepreneurship, never really looked back. I do think that, yeah, that is more aligned with some human nature. But let's start with that big question. Are humans meant to work?
I think we're meant to do fulfilling things. Does that mean we're meant to work? It depends. Sometimes people do what's fulfilling and they get paid to do what's fulfilling. I think when you look at some of the greats, right? Albert Einstein, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, I think they're doing work that allows them to be fulfilled in other parts of their life. So let's take Jeff Bezos for a moment. Jeff Bezos' whole goal his entire life was to go to the moon, go to space, do something, get to Mars. So he created this entire company that's going to help him get there. Amazon was only a means to an end. So I think he needed to work to fulfill himself, but I don't think people need to work to be fulfilled. Does that make sense?
It does. And then I have a bunch of like other deep questions on that. So do you think capitalism can scale under the current model? And if not, what would be the evolution of capitalism for bigger and better scale?
Can capitalism scale on the current market? I think it can outside of the US. I think in the US, capitalism is a little bit dark. We're working in a very dark capitalistic society. But when I look at other capitalistic societies, like countries like Australia, countries like Canada, New Zealand, I think these are companies that actually can scale capitalism for the betterment of society, for the growth of everyone, not just the select few. I think the difference in America is capitalism, although I'm not opposed to working hard and doing what you need to. I'm not saying Jeff Bezos should share his wealth. I actually don't subscribe to that, but I do believe that we are allowing these moguls the ability to monopolize the market, and that hinders capitalism in America, where I don't think that we do that in other countries. And so I think capitalism needs to kind of be turned on its head, or you will see a mass exodus of entrepreneurs from the US.
Yeah, I think also from a resource perspective, not even talking about the green stuff and the classic quote unquote environment stuff. I think when you just take resources for your current environment, you will stop scale at some point, but it's because it's all about destruction and consumption, and you don't replenish it. And by definition, you will stop exploitation of the land, let's call it that way. Although that might be somewhat woo-woo applied to the computer science land of things where we're seeing hypergrowth nowadays. Yeah, I think we need to add that more social aspect to it and less like fast growth. The thing is, we look at these folks and they're like, oh yeah, he's number one, so let me try to emulate that. First, that is quite hard.
Exactly.
Second, you cannot compare yourself. It's like probabilistically impossible to do all the same moves in the same environment that already changed like a second ago. I mean, I admired these guys still because they did something that was really, really, really hard. And I won't even say the word lucky, but okay, thanks for that one. Let me ask the next one, which is also somewhat challenging. Well, it's a bit less challenging to me, but do you think the 9 to 5 model or salary model or hourly rates model, do you think that can scale?
I think it should be flipped. I don't know that. I don't know what you mean by scale. Like, I understand the term, but I think
Like through time, can it grow like a seed into a tree, aka can it flourish, can it grow?
the 9 to 5, I don't think it can. I think the 9 to 5 should be flipped on its head, because I don't think we work in a 9 to 5 world anymore. When we work in a world that is quickly becoming AI dependent, I'll call it that, or at least AI mundane, right? All of the mundane things that we do, we shoot off to AI. We ask them to pull all of the research that we're going to do to create some new model, right? We're not asking AI to create a model, but we certainly don't want to do all the research ourselves. So I'm going to shoot AI a message. I'm going to ask them to do the research for me while I go create the other model. But I don't need to sit down from 9 to 5 to do that. I can be very creative from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Take a second to do kind of the responses, be a little bit more communicative, a little bit more social in the middle of my workday, and then I can be a little bit more creative at the end of my workday. I think creativity is what is going to drive humans, is what is going to allow human scale. Mundane is going to be what we give to AI. Innovation and creativity is what's going to scale humans value, and that is not a 9 to 5. That is not a 9 to 5. We can't ask people to only be intelligent from 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. It doesn't make sense.
What percentage of humans in an organization have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset?
Oh, I'm going to be really controversial and tell you 10%. I think 10% have a growth mindset, 90% have a fixed mindset. That is the God's.
And that's exactly my stats. I brought them today in my newsletter. I think that's accurate. How do you think that can, I'm not going to use the word, the scale again, but because, my thesis is that the 10% will use AI.
Yeah.
But the 90%, do you think they'll adapt? Do you think a good percentage of them will make the jump to growth mindset, or are they waiting for the government to take care of them?
That's a great question. I think maybe that 90% will lean on, a portion will lean on AI to be a little bit of their growth, if that makes sense. I'm going to use bots to make me look like I'm growing. And then but I think that will be very minimal, right? Because even a growth mindset person has to be someone who recognizes the leverage that AI provides us. And so that's still that's a small percentage out of that 90%. So do I think the government will take care of them? Or are they going to wait for that? They might wait for that, but the truth is that might not happen. But that's where you get into like what I think will be a true sci-fi world where AI a little bit runs what we do, and there is a bare minimum of humanity that keeps us human.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Let's try to take a jab at that one, statistically speaking. So if it is a tsunami-like event like COVID, right? Like the question is, how much people took the pay packages in Canada? I think even the growth mindset folks took these cash parachutes. They were loans, there was free cash. Even my dad is an entrepreneur. I think he took some of that. And I think like most of them took advantage of that. Now, the real question is, what percentage of folks adapted to these times? Well, could I rephrase the question? What are these times? It's a more digital world. I saw boomers even adapt to technology. I never thought that would be possible. I mean, it's a complex, multi-layered question right there, but I think when humans are pushed against a wall, I think they don't have a choice to adapt. And I think that 90% actually adapt to this new world. Now, this new world, it won't be black and white like AI as overlords and giving orders, or will it be such a world? So I think very few stay in the actual hole and don't move and are, like the classic self-destruction mechanism, like constant self-sabotage, and they never go anywhere. But how the other question is like, even if they adapt, how will they be able to outcompete a super intelligence? That will definitely be a complex
I don't
question.
think the
Can you try to
90%
help me there?
will. I don't think the 90% will adapt. I think that's what you were saying, right?
Because like to technology, right? Like if we're talking about using Zoom or using an iPad, like I think boomers have adapted to that.
Sure.
If we're talking about using AI as a tool to make money, which I think is the question right now, I think most will, but there's so much, there's like other dynamics at play here. There's AI that is constantly growing fast and is being used by the 0.1%, which are super intelligent human beings. And scaling that AI is so much that even if I'm trying to adapt at some point as, I don't know, like a fixed mindset person, even if I make the jump to growth mindset, I don't have a shot because I'm too slow at adapting. Let's say that my adaptation rate is like, I don't know, I grow 3% per day.
Yeah.
That AI grows 300% a day.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, it is dangerous. And I think it's only dangerous to those who are choosing to sit back and not adopt quickly. But this has always been the case. So coming as a change agent, right? I'm a certified change professional. Being an organizational psychologist, I'm constantly looking at change. The people who are most successful in change are those who adapt early and quickly. Those who are the least successful are the ones who are resistant most often, and either they lose their job or they fail at the new process. And so they become the static mindset person. So for me, I think the idea that what we're talking about is humanity as a whole must adopt to what we are already creating, right? Humans created AI. It's not something that came out of nothing. So humans created them. Now we are the ones who should adapt them. And the intelligent will utilize it as a benefit and not a hindrance, right? So I think the answer maybe is there's 3% of people that probably will be the ones leading AI versus just letting AI lead them. I think that's where we're going to be, right? I think we are headed into a place where sci-fi is a reality. That's the future is today.
It's also weird because like Homo sapiens historically have always used tools, this cup to drink coffee, always. This spear to hunt, the fire.
Yes.
Even us walking on our two legs is an invention. We're bipeds. That is weird, very weird in itself when you think about it. Not sure how we got to this point, but in terms of the 300% growth per rate, that is like highly arbitrary. We don't have proof that it will happen. So that might like stop the theory right there. Then I think it could lead to two scenarios that I have in mind, if we, and obviously my brain is trying to reproduce, the COVID scenario, but like from an economical perspective, once AI starts picking massive velocity. So we're not sure about that. But if that happens, the scenario would look like markets are stopped, people are losing their job massively, CEOs are laughing the crap out of themselves, they're making money like never before.
Yes.
There's like this new class of AI oligarchs. Yes. And governments are frigging slow. I think they will be a bit faster since they had that reaction time tested in COVID. I wouldn't want to be a prime minister, by the way, during these times. That would be a lot of stress. And then they start dropping cash and laws to prevent that from happening again. How long would that take? Probably 6 to 12 months. Would it be the definite solution? Definitely not. Just like COVID, by the way, the packages is not a definite solution.
No.
Like what is stopping the world from having another pandemic? Zero, nothing, nada.
But it doesn't have to be a pandemic. It could be a global economic shutdown that puts us in a place that that leads us to the pandemic times. I think, though,
Yeah.
what you're speaking to and what might be our saving grace, I think that you said a couple of things, right? CEOs are making millions of dollars because their overhead is very minimal now. Now bots do everything, right? So so when you go back to that concept of scaling capitalism and you go back to that concept of how many people have a growth mindset, those 10% that have a growth mindset are only going to be the ones that can scale capitalism when utilizing and leveraging AI, right? And that's why they are going to be the ones that's why the CEOs are going to be making money hand over fist, because your overhead has become literally the push of a button and not the feeding of 5,000 humans in your organization. Now I'm just pushing a button for 5,000 bots to send me information. And I think the truth could be very true when you think about it from a governmental perspective. What if we created bots that held true to governmental factions of what we wanted, and then we remove the human component? Then that becomes very, very bipartisan, which is something my country is dealing with on a regular basis. And so you allow for emotion-free politics and government drive, which on some level might then give the ability to take the country back to what it should be, if that makes sense. I realize that's very far-fetched, but I don't think it's that far out.
Well, yeah, obviously it's simpler than dynamics, but what we're going to see is like a capitalism overshift, because obviously this market is way more complex than just corporations. But let's call it that this will be the 80% effect, a drastic tsunami that will be coming. And the only outcome to this would be these companies amassing humongous sums of capital and deciding to give back to society. Now there's also social startups nowadays. Entrepreneurs that, let's say, go 20% social, 80% capital. I think they would do good at scale. I think that would be definitely something. There's also competent people in the government that would deploy these AIs and make something better. I think
exactly
after this storm, my prediction is that there will be beauty after that. There will be more abundance, if that makes sense. But I mean, that doesn't mean that resources will be abundant. Maybe it will scale actually consumption. Maybe it's something that we definitely don't want. But talking about the psychology of these people, like, what if you're jobless? Like, what does your life look like? Do you spend your time like worrying? Do you spend your time looking for a new job? Like, what do you do? Do you actually start a business? Because that's also another of my controversial prediction. I think everyone will be entrepreneurs in the future.
So it's funny that you say that, because I just spoke at a conference in my industry last month, and that is exactly what I said. I said, you graduating with a degree in IO psychology today are better off working for yourself and becoming your own boss than you are looking for a job inside an organization. Because in today's world, where organizational psychologists first enter into the workplace, it is in talent acquisition, it is in employee engagement, it is in performance management, and all of those things are becoming enhanced by artificial intelligence. And the beauty of artificial intelligence when it comes to a recruiting perspective is that it removes the human bias that we have constantly, as organizational psychologists, combated for decades, because it is nearly impossible to remove all of the bias from humanity, but a robot will remove that. So when you are going to employee selection and you want to make sure you're getting the right person and that your unconscious bias doesn't have an impact, the best way to do that is a robot. The same thing is true for performance management. Oftentimes organizations are promoting people that you're wondering, wait, how is that person promoted when this person worked the hardest? It's because there's unconscious bias or conscious bias happening in the workplace, allowing these people to be promoted. And when you leave that up to robots, you remove that bias altogether. Again, I think AI allows for a bipartisan world, and that's what will drive our future, to your point, success. And then and only then will entrepreneurs become the norm and not the outlier. because we then need to carve out our own world. We have to carve out our own world. And the only way we can do that is through creativity. And I think innovation, and humans still have the drop on that from AI, because all of that's programmed, right? We're not there yet. We're not there to self-program and reprogram.
Yeah, let's close this off with something funny. Well, a bunch of people, they're like, AI is super biased and so forth. Why? Because it's built on the back of humanity. Yeah, I'm not too bullish on that one. I think that if you prompt an AI right and you give it the right orders, and if you feed it the right data, right, a set control of data, obviously its core algorithm doesn't change, but there's ways in which it can be way less biased. And what's the comparison? Less biased than another human. I am so goddamn biased on my side, even if I try not to be. So yeah, I would also be pro AI when it comes to that. Doesn't mean that we don't need to work on the current bias of AIs, because there's a lot of bias in AIs. No shit, Sherlock. It's a creation of humans.
It's created by biased humans. That makes perfect sense. But I think the intelligent human would design it in a way where they potentially could remove that. I think that's the whole point of it. That's the idea, right? That's the whole point. Otherwise, we're only creating an extension of ourselves instead of a more intelligent form. That's not ideal.
Christine, thank you so much for coming on. That was a cool discussion. Where can people find out more about you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Your Organizational Psychologist. You can find me on LinkedIn at Mikhail Consulting Group. And you can sign up for my change course right now. I'm signing up for my September course. I've got 12 spots left. MikhailConsultingGroup.com/curate your change.
Thank you so much. And I am Charles Cormier.